Okay, I've got about 10 seconds until 10:45. So I'm going to get started with the introduction for Igor Ovchinnikov, who is a professional trainer from the Bay Area who's been using Excel since 1995 and teaching the tool for the past 18 plus years. He's been teaching a number of classes with technology training for the past 14 years. And now I'm going to pass things over to Igor for your presentation. Are you able to unmute yourself? Great.
Can you hear me?
Yes, the floor is yours.
All right. Hello, everyone. We're going to talk about Excel, and this is a short session, so we need to prioritize what we do, right? Because Excel is huge, and there's a lot to talk about. So I'm going to... All right. So the main purpose of this little session is to make you more aware of some of the things that are hiding inside Excel that you really need to know about if you work with data, if you need to massage data, report data, get data, and so on. So today you'll discover some of the things you can do, and I'm going to show you a little demonstration of what you can do. Just to get started, I want to go through a few points before I demonstrate what it is. Why Excel sometimes is limited, right? We're all using Excel and using it all the time, some people more than others, but if you work with any numbers or data, you use it a lot. So what are the caveats of Excel? Well, first of all, there's a limited number of rows, right? It's like 1,048,576 rows, which is enough for most people, but it's not enough for some people. And even that is a stretch. If you try to put 1 million rows into Excel, you cannot do that. Another thing, everything is in one place. Excel doesn't have any division of labor, so to speak. Like if you ever work with databases, you know, like you keep data in one place, you query data in another place, and then you report data in the third place. In Excel, everything is in one place, which gives you a wonderful flexibility, but also creates a bunch of problems. Excel is difficult to use to combine data, and it's like everything is in one place. You have a data source. It's kind of hard to get data from multiple data sources originally, until quite recently. So it is also not very easy to transform data. Sometimes you get your data in a messed up way, and you want to make it look and structure it exactly the way you want it, and that is not an easy exercise. It requires a lot of creativity, building formulas, and so on. And everybody does it in their own ways. And it's not a relational database. People used to refer to Excel files as a spreadsheet or as a flat file. You know, database people have this term, flat file versus relational database. So if you think about what you do in Excel as a data workflow, first you get your data somehow, and you know, you can get it by email. Somebody sends you a file. You can extract it from a database, like export it. You might have a CSV file. Then you put it inside an Excel spreadsheet. You can just double-click to open, or you copy-paste, and you start massaging it and, you know, deleting things and trying to make your data ready for analysis for the report. And you have to do it over and over and over again, which turns into either a really boring exercise because you've done it many, many times before. And it's also, it is also a lot of repetitive stuff, like you have to do it again and again and again. So in Excel 2010, Microsoft introduced a new set of tools that were not technically inside Excel. You could install it as an add-on to Excel, and they're still trying to they're still soul searching about how to name that stuff. And people usually call them self-service BI. So basically business intelligence right in Excel that you can use, and it's always at your fingertips. You are not dependent on an IT department or anybody. It's Excel, it's in Excel if you put it in. And they used a lot of power words like Power Query, Power Pivot, and Power View, Power Map. So a lot of power, which kind of scared people away from that, like power. Wow. So let's think what, let me kind of demonstrate roughly what it does. Database people have an acronym, just like technical people do have acronyms. ETL, extract, transform, and load. So you have one system that has data in it. You want to extract some data from there and then transform it in some way so that another system can read it. So that's ETL, extract, transform, and load. So Power Query that was added as one of those tools in Excel is designed to do just that, to extract data and then transform it and prepare it for analysis. And the pivot tables is a common tool to summarize data and prepare that report. And if you've used pivot tables, you know how powerful they can be. So that is kind of the typical get and transform workflow. Of course, Power Query, I guess it scared away many people, and Microsoft is moving away from the term Power Query. They're calling it the get and transform functionality. So what is get and transform? It is a special engine inside Excel that allows you to extract data from one place, massage it, manipulate it, and then put it into another place for reporting. It allows you to connect to multiple data sources, which is really huge for Excel users. It is very difficult to do it without these tools. And it allows you to prepare the data, kind of massage and transform it. It's kind of, I like to think about it as a yoga studio or a massage parlor for data. Right? You take your data and you shape it and transform and massage it and get it ready for the next step. Power Pivot, on the other hand, it's another special engine inside Excel. And it brings in what's called relational database functionality for Excel users. Like straight in Excel, you have a relational database now, and most people are not even aware of that. So you can take data from anywhere into Power Pivot, and there's a big portion of it called data model, and you can create relationships between different data sets. If you know how, of course, you need to learn how to do that. And then prepare very powerful reports based on multiple data sources linked into one data model. So, let me show you a quick kind of a rough workflow that you can think about when you're using these tools. First of all, you no longer import data, even though it's called importing, but technically you connect to the data source. You're not like bringing it into Excel immediately. So instead of putting it into Excel, you connect. And if it's a good data source, then you can just connect to it directly and put it into a data model, right? And then you can use it in your reporting tools. Now, if it's a bad data source, on the other hand, you can first put it through the get and transform of the Power Query, and then you can put it into the data model, and then you can use it into in your reporting tools. So that is kind of requires you to think in a slightly different way about your workflow, like what you do. How do you process your data? How do you connect, and how do you transform it before you report it? So this is like a really straightforward example. You have a really messed up, horrible data set, right? If you look at this, it has like blank rows, blank columns. This is all messed up. You don't want that one. So normally somebody who gets a data set like that will start like, okay, I need to delete some columns, delete rows, and try to massage it in some way. So you need to do it, and ideally you want to get this. You want to get the same data, but in this different format, which is ready for pivot tables. again, the data workflow, you need a good data set, and then you can use pivot tables to prepare your summary report. So this is a typical one table, one data set task. So let me show you now a quick demonstration. So I don't want to bore you with the PowerPoint. I'm going to exit my presentation here for a second, and I'm going to demonstrate what you can do with it. So I have several example files, and one, I'm going to just show it to you. So this is a messed up, horrible structure. Let's assume somebody sent it to me, or somebody got it from some database, and I need to do something with this. So lots of problems with this data set. Like, I don't need any of this stuff. Yeah, at this data set, it's like, yeah, this is bad. This is a bad data set. I got an internet connection unstable, so you can, if I start breaking up, you can tell me. Anyway, I'm not going to start playing with this data set inside Excel. This is a CSV file. CSV, comma separated values, it's a, text file. Normally, people open it right in Excel and save it as an Excel file and start changing it. Now, what I'm going to do instead, I'm going to launch Excel and create a new file. I'm going to create a new workbook. And this is going to be my data transformation and reporting tool, this separate file. What I'm going to do, I'm going to first connect to my messed up data set. So I go to Data, tab on the ribbon, and all of the get and transform functionality is right here. It's hiding. Most people don't use it. Some people do, but it's really worth learning about it. So there are different data sources I can connect to using this. And in this case, it's a CSV file. I can just click directly from text to CSV. And the tool opens. I need to go and find my data source, and I'm going to do it quickly. And here's my CSV file. I'm going to click Import. Import is a misnomer. I am bringing it in, but I'm connecting to the data source. I'm not importing it yet into my reporting tool. So a dialog box comes up. I need to transform the data. I don't need to load it, otherwise it would load it. I'm going to click on Transform the Data. And this is what is that hidden area of Excel. It's called Power Query Editor, or the Get and Transform, but it's still Power Query. So this doesn't even look like Excel, but it's part of Excel. It is a secret area of Excel, the Yoga Studio for data. So, and many of the tools to transform data sets are built right in. I don't need to get creative with fancy formulas. I can get started with just built-in interface tools. So again, I'm not slowing down because my idea is not to teach you how to use it, but to show you what you can do with this. So first of all, I have a bunch of blank rows. Direct click, remove blank rows. All of the blank rows are gone. Now I have this column 3, and I'm going to hold the control key, and this one column is, those are empty columns. There's no data. Additionally, I'm going to control click on column 9. It is giving me totals. I don't need totals in my data set. Like pivot tables report allows me to create totals. So I'm going to remove them. Just right click and remove columns, like you normally would. I do not need, for my purposes, any of this stuff above. So I have 6 rows, and there's a direct tool, 6 rows on top, remove rows, top rows. And I'm going to type 6 rows I want to get rid of. And now the top 6 rows are gone. The top row at this point is actually supposed to be column headings. And in this tool, it's important to have column headings. It's a direct click, Home tab, first row as headers. Now it promotes the first row that is remaining as column headers. Now, what I need to do, I need to fill the blank cells here with the value above. There are ways to do it in Excel, but here it's a direct way. There's a direct way to do this. So, but before I do that, I just happen to know, since I've used the tool for a while, that it's better for me to replace the blank cells with the now value first. So I'm going to select everything, and I'm going to right-click now, and I'm going to replace values, and I'm going to replace nothing with now, and now needs to be in all lowercase. So now all the blank cells are replaced with now. At this point, it is really easy to fill down. It's a direct tool. I don't need to do fancy formulas. I don't need to be creative. I just right-click, fill down, and I get repeated values. Now there's a couple more things with this data set. I see that data is grouped. It's like this is data for model 78948 and so on. And then I have another group right here. What I need for data analysis is not group data, but instead I need a column that will list the model number, right? So like repeating values in a separate column. Very easy to do. I just go to add a column. And there are several ways to do it, but I'm going to use conditional column, which it's a special tool that allows me to find some logic in my data and add a column based on that logic. The logic I'm using here is whenever I have now in this column, I want to display something from this column. Whenever it's not now in this column, like anywhere here, I want to show now. It's like if this, then that. Very common approach in data management. So if column, I'm going to select city, equals to now, oops, need to be all lowercase, and then please show me the value from column region, because whenever this is null, what I have in region is the model number. Otherwise, give me null. If this, then that. If this column is null, show me what's in that column. Otherwise, show me null. Click OK. So now I have a separate column that is giving me the model number. And again, I need to fill repeating values. I right-click and go to fill down. And now I have the model number nicely filled in a separate column. Of course, now I don't need model number in column region. And I can achieve that in several ways, but here it's easy to just filter out null from city or quarter two and so on, quarter one, quarter two. So here I'm just gonna filter out null and click OK. But actually, if I scroll down, I see that there's also some weird characters I want to get rid of also. So I'm gonna filter it again. I'm going to filter out that weird character. So now I don't have anything below the data. Now I'm going to put custom column. It's still called custom with the model on the left-hand side. And I'm going to split it. I don't want the word model in every single one of them. I just want the model number. And the column is going to be called model or model number. Right-click. Split column by delimiter. The delimiter is space. In my case, very easy. In this case, I'm going to click OK. So now that column was split into two. And column one with the word model repeating is completely unnecessary. I'm going to remove it. And column two, I'm going to call it model. And press enter. So just double click and press enter. There's one more thing for me to do, or maybe a couple more. And this next one is almost impossible to do in Excel without using Power Query. Almost impossible. Notice that I have pivoted data. You see that I have quarter one, quarter two, quarter three, quarter four, and I have data in the intersections. What I really need, I need to have a separate column that is showing me the quarter, repeating quarters, quarter one, quarter one, quarter one, quarter two, and so on. And another column with date, like numbers, sales, or whatever they are. So again, in Excel, it's very difficult to do. You can do a macro. There are some tricky, you really bend backwards when you try to do this in Excel. Here is just select them, and then there's a direct tool for that. It is unpivot. This data is called pivoted data, and you need to unpivot it. So just go to unpivot columns, and I selected them, so I'm going to select just unpivot columns or unpivot selected columns. So that will flip the data, unpivot it, and now I have my quarter column, which I'm going to rename quarter. And this one, I'm going to call it like sales, whatever the numbers are. And just one more finishing touch here. What I'm going to do, I'm going to change the data type. It's important to have the right data type before you analyze your data. This is automatically, Power Query decided to keep it as ABC data type, which is text. What I need is probably currency or decimal number. I'm going to select currency. So the data type is changed. Now, before I finish my transformations, I'm pretty much done with my transformations. I want to draw your attention to this panel. And I want to mention that every transformation step that I have performed until now is recorded, kind of like a macro, but all the steps, step by step. I can go to a previous step if necessary and see the data before all the other steps. But I'm going to go back to my final step. When the steps are recorded, later I can connect a different data set to this transformation and just run it and refresh, and it will be all transformed without me having to do all of that. So now I'm ready. The data is ready. I'm going to click on Home and choose Close and Load. I'm ready to load. Extract, transform, load, right? I'm going to load to instead of load. And here there's an option to load it into a table or load it as a connection only. I'm going to load it into a table, but what I'm going to do, I'm going to also add it to the data model. The data model is part of Excel Power Pivot functionality. And I'm going to click OK. So the data, nice and transformed and clean and ready for analysis, is added to my, as a table on a different sheet. And also it is in the data model. Very quickly, I'm going to import or transform and add one more file. I'm going to go to data. I'm going to now get data from a file, workbook. In this case, it's not a CSV file, but it's workbook. And I have another file here called list of products, a separate data set. What it has in there is a little reference table, very small one in this case. I'm going to transform it using the Power Query again. And this one is much easier than the previous one. All I need to do is get rid of the top part. And in this case, I'm just going to unfilter, like remove null. And then I'm going to use first row as headers, promote the first row to be headers. This is it. I am pretty much done with that. I'm going to rename this query. So that I know what it is. So I'm going to call it products and press enter. And now I'm going to close and load it again. Extract, transform, load. I'm going to load to. And I can put it into, again, a table if I want to, but I want to add it as a data model. Add it to the data model. So now I have two tables in this spreadsheet. They are not just data in the spreadsheet. They are connected to their relative data, their corresponding data sources. What I can do now, I can link them using the relational database functionality. And that's the data model. I'm going to go to Power Pivot, Manage Data Model. And again, not getting too deeply into this. This is something that this learning curve in order to get there. But I'm going to go to the diagram view. And if you ever used relational databases, you will instantly recognize that this is similar to, say, Microsoft Access. where you can link tables by common fields. And in my case, the model is the common field. All right, so now I have a relationship between the model column in my bad data structure, which is actually good data structure now, and products. Now I'm ready to do my analysis. I'm gonna go back to Excel and insert pivot table, and I'm gonna put it on a new worksheet, but I'm gonna use the data model in this file. So because I have the data model that combines various data sources, and I'm going to click OK. And now I have a pivot table, and I have multiple two tables in this case that I can use to create my pivot table report. So I'm just going to say, well, how about region in rows, and then maybe color of the model in columns, and then maybe sales in values. So I'm slicing and dicing, preparing my pivot table report. But unlike a regular pivot table based on a single flat file, on a single data set, this one is using more than one data set combined in the data model. The best part, if I update my data sources, I can just refresh and all of my reports will be refreshed. Like the whole transformation will happen again, but all I need to do is click refresh a couple of times. So that is one example. I have 11 minutes after 11. I know I go until 15. Let me show you, I try to show you another example. So I'm going to save this one. I'll just save it, whatever it is. And I'm going to show you quickly an example where I don't really need to use Power Query. I have a merge query, another data set. I'm going to just open it. So here's a common example of work that you need to do if you need to prepare a pivot table report. You have orders table without details, but you have foreign key columns, you know, the references to employees and customers. So you want to create a pivot table report, but you need to fill information about employees and customers. And without the Power Pivot, you would have to do a lot of VLOOKUP. If you've used VLOOKUPs, you know what I'm talking about. You do VLOOKUP, look up from one table and add data to this table. Instead, what I can do here, I'm just gonna convert these into tables first. So this is my table one will be orders. Okay, transactions. Employees, I'm gonna also convert it into an Excel table, and I'm gonna call it employees. And customers, I'm gonna convert it into Excel table again. And this one is gonna be called customers. I'm gonna rename it quickly. So what I can do now, I can just add them. This is clean data, doesn't require any fixing. I can just go to Power Pivot and add this one to data model straight. In this case, I'm connecting to the source, but the source is inside this spreadsheet, inside the workbook. Okay, now I'm gonna go back and connect employees table. I'm gonna add it to data model. And now I'm going to switch back into Excel and customers, I'm gonna add it to data model. Now I'm gonna go and link these tables. I'm gonna click diagram view, and the tables I added are right here. So here, what I need to do, I need to take employee ID and connect it to employee ID in the employees table. And I'm gonna take custom ID and connect it to custom ID in the customers table, which creates a data model linking 3 tables by common fields. And now I'm ready to create a pivot table. I can actually do it straight from the Power Pivot window, from the data model window. Pivot table, create pivot table. I'm gonna put it on a new worksheet, obviously. And here you go. I can now pivot data from 3 tables. So my transactions table So let's say I want to pivot by customer company. I'm going to put, that comes from customers table. I'm going to put maybe, well, let me do quantity. So this is by customer, quantity by customer. And I can take employee state as my columns here. So now I'm slicing data, preparing a pivot table report based on 3 tables, which are connected using the data model. And that's the power of Power Pivot and Power Query.
Thank you very much, Igor. We're at 11:15 right now, so we'll have next 10 minutes open to Q&A. Was there anything else you need to finish your thought on before we get to the Q&A?
Well, very quickly, let me...
Okay, and while you're doing that, it looks like you may have frozen up again. Some people have been asking about the recordings of the session for today, and I just want to let folks know that... Okay.
Go ahead.
I just want to let folks know, sorry, Igor, that the select recordings of these Techie Festival sessions will be made available off the Techie Festival page afterwards. So we'll make sure that you're aware of when those sessions are going to be available. Go ahead, Igor. Sorry about that.
Okay. No, I think I'm done.
Okay.
If you want to learn more, these are the classes. Normally, this functionality, ideally, you need to do it in this sequence. You need to first take the pivot table class or be familiar with pivot tables, quite familiar. And then the second would be the Power Query, get and transform, and then the Power Pivot. And that is how I would learn it in that sequence.
Great, thank you very much, Igor. Igor will also be teaching classes for the Techie Festival, including an introduction to Excel macros, Excel tips and tricks, and an Excel pivot tables basics class. We'll be posting the links to those classes inside the chat for you momentarily. But let's go ahead into the Q&A for the questions that you have for Igor. And the question I have at the top here is actually one commenter. Somebody have been using Open Refine for this type of cleanup, but they find that Power Query Editor is super handy. That's just a nice comment.
Okay.
Question that came up after that was, how do you get to the Power Query Editor again? Can you show a quick example of how to do that again?
Okay, so Power Query Editor, you can still see my screen, right?
Yes.
So, okay, so there are 2 things. Power Query is already built in. If you have Excel installed, it's data and all of these commands right here, the get and transform, that's another term for Power Query. That is the yoga studio for your data. Now, for Power Pivot, which I have this, you need to activate it. It comes with Excel, but you need to go to File, and then Options, and then you need to go to Add-ins, and then select Manage and choose COM Add-ins. Again, you need to activate it, and then go, and that's where you need to put a check mark. Initially, Power Pivot was actually something you needed to install separately, but this day and age, it's in there, it's just not activated as an add-in. It comes with Excel.
Great, thank you. Next question is, what about graphing with BI?
Well, the usual pivot charts is an option. So let's say you have your pivot table report. I'm gonna maybe remove state province, make it simpler. And then you can import a pivot, like create a pivot chart, not import a pivot chart. And all of the charts that you get in Excel are there. A pivot chart is linked to your pivot table like that. So yeah, you can visually present your data, your report.
Thank you. Next question is, in Power Pivot, is a number of lines the same as an Excel worksheet?
In Power Pivot, you do not have to bring data into the worksheet. You can actually take, if you have a huge data set, you don't need to load it into your Excel. What you do, you connect and take it straight into the Power Pivot tool. So for that, it's important not to load it because, I mean, if it's over 1 million, whatever, rows, it will not load. But I've tried I've tried 60 million records. I had a data set that had 60 million records in it. And of course, I couldn't bring it into Excel, but I could connect using the data model or Power Query also. You can connect using Power Query. And then without loading it into Excel, when close and load, instead of load it into Excel, you load it as a connection only and add it to the data model. So you can, I know that people did like 100 million records and it doesn't even slow down at all. It's really a robust tool.
Thank you. Next question. Is the formatting for the queries automatic, as example as in the green fill in the chart?
Is the formatting for the queries automatic? Green fill in the chart. You mean the pivot chart?
Yeah, for the person who
I mean, it's automatic, but you can change the design here. So it's automatic, but you can do anything custom, like you can style it. I don't know if I am answering the right question, but if that's the question, then there's automatic part, but you can customize everything. You can, just like normally a chart in Excel.
So the person who asked the question, Corey, if you have a follow-up or if you want to be more specific, please feel free to post it into the Q&A. We'll move on to the next question, which is, will Power Query replace Access?
No, it will not, because Power Query is not, Power Query. Power Query is the transformation tool, and Power Pivot is the reporting tool that can be linked to the transformation tool. Access is a database where you actually store data and keep data and maintain data. So no, it's not going to replace it. It is more for extracting data from any data source and then preparing it for analysis and then preparing a report. And also in such a way that you don't have to repeat that every time you need to update your data. You just refresh your data when the data source changes. But no, it will not replace Access. It's a different tool.
Okay, thank you very much. And I'm going to give Corey an opportunity if you have any other follow-up questions. But that is all the questions that we have for you so far. Want to thank you very much, Igor, for joining us this morning. And also just want to let folks know that you can always go to techufestival.stanford.edu or techtraining.stanford.edu just to see the list of all of our upcoming classes, including the links that Creed had posted into the chat, which ended with a link for all of the other Excel classes. And Igor is teaches a lot of those Excel classes for us as well, so you'll be able to see him in the future for those classes. So unless there's any other questions, we just want to thank you again. And okay, Corey did confirm that answered the question. Thank you very much, Corey, for confirming. And thank you again, Igor.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Happy excelling to you all.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. I hope you excel at Excel.
Have a great rest of the day. And our next session is actually going to be starting at, let me scroll down a bit here, at 11:30. This will be the Smartsheet tools and knock your socks off. And I want to welcome our next presenter, who is going to be Jaime Rivera from Smartsheet. And as this session doesn't start until 11:30, we're going to take another quick break. But during this break, feel free to ask any questions inside of the chat, as well as continue to ask any questions inside the Q&A, especially if you have any pre-questions for Jaime. And then we will have Jaime's presentation will go until 12 o'clock, and then we'll spend the next 10 minutes after that talking about your questions and giving your answers.